God is so amazing. No matter what transition you're going through, a lot of it has to be able to take into captivity the patterns, the patterns that you're thinking. What if the problem is not the person? What if the problem is the patterns that the person is thinking? What if the problem is the patterns that the person is thinking? Now, before I transition into a few keys, I want to go into Matthew because Jesus is teaching us that we have to learn how to unlearn. Like, I have to learn to unlearn. I have to learn to unlearn. What does that mean? Jesus talks about this, and he talks about them, and he talks about they, and he talks about all these things that we need to unlearn. What if the learning is in the unlearning? That's what wilderness is. Wilderness is unlearning. This is where wilderness is delivering you from you. I have to unlearn things I've learned growing up in church that were not biblical. Like, just because I learned it inside of a quote unquote church doesn't mean it's from God, doesn't mean it's biblical. And that's another thing, that it can sound spiritual, but is it biblical? Like, everybody wants to get spiritual until it gets biblical. Now, Jesus, he comes preaching a kingdom from above, a kingdom that is above. And in Matthew chapter 5, I want to share with y'all just a few keys here in the book of Matthew, that in Matthew 5, Jesus is teaching us, and he actually goes through, this is the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, but he goes through a few things, right? He talks about the characteristics of a disciple, and blessed are those, and then he starts teaching us about our identity, that you are the salt of this earth, you are the light of this world, and then he starts going into talking about the laws, and then he starts saying this saying, you have heard it once said. And he says this over and over again in Matthew, starting from Matthew 21. You have heard that it was said to those of old, right? So he keeps saying this. He keeps saying this. You have heard it, that it was said. You have heard it once said. And there's so much I can talk about this. This is just a great teaching overall. But I'm going to keep this simple. In Matthew 5:38, so all throughout these chapters from 21 and then I'm all the way to 38, he keeps telling them, you have heard it said. So in Matthew 5:38, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him too. Right? This is so good. Give it to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. You have heard it once said. You have heard it said. You have heard it said. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Like, okay, that was Old Testament teaching. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And here comes the Pharisees, right, in the scene in the chapters later and what they're hearing. But Jesus comes to preach about a kingdom. Jesus didn't come to destroy the law. He came to fulfill the law. So here he comes, says, you have heard it once said. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So meaning, if that person tries to hit my eye, I'm taking out his eye. If he's taking out my tooth, I'm taking out. But what does Jesus say? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, slap him on the other side. No, it does not say that. Jesus does not say eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. He says, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. Turn the other to him also. What I'm here to encourage us, that Jesus was teaching them, you have heard it once said, from them, from they, you have heard it said this way, but I'm coming not to destroy, I'm coming to fulfill. I want you to be able to turn the other cheek. I know you once heard said that it was eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but now I'm telling you, don't resist an evil person, but turn the other cheek. Jesus is preaching about the kingdom above. And I think a lot of what we need to unlearn is patterns that we once learned. And I think I'm coming against the spirit of religion, the legalistic type of spirit, because Jesus is dealing with the Pharisees during this time. And he's trying to teach the ones that have ears to hear and eyes to see, right? That's why Jesus spoke in parables. And I'm talking about this because in Matthew 13, this is all going to play a part in, again, being able to understand that what if the pattern is the issue? What if the issue is not the person, but it's the patterns that the person is thinking? What if the problem is the patterns that this person is thinking, not being conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good, acceptable, and the perfect will of God, not being conformed or influenced by the patterns of this world, the patterns of this godless society. Matthew chapter 13, verse 10, it says, "And the disciples came and said to Jesus, 'Why do you speak to them in parables?' And Jesus answered and said to them, 'Because it has been given to you to know that the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables.'" Again, I want to highlight they, them. That's therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. In them the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, "Hearing you will hear and shall not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive, for the hearts of this people have grown dull. Their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should turn with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For surely I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desire to see what you see and did not see it, and hear what you hear and did not hear it." This is the disciples, and Jesus is speaking to them. This is in red. Jesus is speaking to his disciples when they asked him, "Why do you speak in parables? Why do you speak to them in parables?" I'm going to say this again, okay? In verse 11, he answered and said to them, "Because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. Let those that have eyes, let them see. Let those that have ears, let them hear." Who is them? Who is they? Them, the Pharisees. They, the unsaved loved ones. Them, family members. They, the co-workers. Them, the roommates. Them, the managers. Them, the legalistic people, the religious folks. Them that been in church, but they're so condemning. Them, they. Those that don't have ears. Those that don't have the Spirit of God. That can't hear. That can't receive and obey the commandments of Jesus Christ himself. I pray for them. We intercede for them. And they do not hear, therefore they do not see, because they need to unlearn what they've once learned. This is so good, y'all, and I hope that you guys can be able to transform your patterns, transform your mind.